Chapter 8 Balloons and Balloons. Wonder Mary Poppins and Mr. Banks hurrying into the nursery one morning. If you will have time to do some shopping for me. She gave Mary Poppins a sweet, nervous smile as though she was uncertain what the answer would be. Mary Poppins turned from the fire, where she was airing in Bill's clothes. "It might," she remarked, not very encouragingly. "Oh, I see," said Mary Poppins as she looked more nervous than ever. "Oh, or again, I might not," continued Mary Poppins, busily shaking a woolen jacket and hanging it over a fire guard. "Well, in case you did have time. Here's the list and here is pound notes. And if there is any change left over, you may spend it." Mary Poppins put the money in the chest of drawers. Mary Poppins said nothing. She just sneaked. "Oh," said Mrs. Banks, suddenly remembering something. "And the twins must walk today, Mary Poppins. Robertson A. sat down to the perambulator this morning. She mistook it for an armchair, so it will have to be mended. Can you manage without it and carry Annabel?" Mary Poppins opened her mouth and closed it again with a snap. "I," remarked tartly, "can manage anything and more if I choose." "Ah, I know," said Mrs. Bank, edging towards the door. "You are a treasure, a perfect treasure, an absolutely perfect and altogether suitable choice." Her voice died away as she hurried down the stairs. And yet, I something wish she wasn't," Mr. Banks remarked to her grandmother's portrait as she dusted the drawing room. "She makes me feel small and silly, as though I were a little girl again. And I'm not." Mrs. Banks tossed her head and flicked a speck of dust from the spotted coat and mantelpiece. "I'm a very important person, and I'm the mother of 5 children. She forgets that." And she went on with her word, thinking out all the things she would like to say Mary Poppins, but knowing all the time that she would never dare. Mary Poppins put the list and pound note into her bag, and in no time she had pinned her on her hat, and she was hurrying out of the house, and Annabel in her arms, and Jane and Michelle, each holding hands of twins, following as quickly as they could. "Best foot forward, please," she marked, turning sternly upon them. They quickened their pace, dragging the poor twins with shuffling sound along pavement. They forgot that Jordan's arm and Barbara's were being pulled nearly out of their sockets. Their only thought was to keep up with Mary Poppins and see what she did with the change from the pound note. 2 packets of candles, 4 pounds of rice, 3 of brown sugar, and 6 of castor, 2 cans of tomato soup, and her brush, a pair of 1,000-made gloves, a half stick of sealing wax, a bag of flour, a free lighter, 2 boxes of matches, 2 cauliflowers, and bundle of rhubarb. Mary Poppins, hurrying into the first shop beyond the park, read out the list. The grocer, who was fat and bald and rather short of breath, looked down the order as quickly as he could. 1 bag of 1,000 gloves, the wrote, nervously licking the rock of his blunt little pencil. "Flour," said Mary Poppins, reminded him tartly. The grocer blushed as the mulberry. "Oh, I'm sorry. No offense mean, I'm sure. Lovely day, isn't it?" "Yes, made mistake. 1 bag of ice. Flour." He hurriedly scribbled it down and added, 2 boxes of hurt brushes. "Matches," snapped Mary Poppins. The grocer's hands trembled on his pad. "Oh, of course, it must be the pencil. It seemed to write all the wrong things. I must get a new one. Matches, of course." And then you said, he looked up nervously and then down again at his little stub of pencil. Mary Poppins unfolded the list, read it out again in an angry, impatient voice. "Sorry," said the grocer as she came to the end, "but Rupert's off. What damsons do? Certainly not a packet of tapioca." Oh, Mary Poppins, not tapioca. We had that last week, Michelle reminded her. She glanced at him and then at the grocer, and by the look in her eyes they both knew that there was no hope. Tapioca it would be. The grocer, blushing redder than ever, went away to get it. Never want any change left if she goes on like this. And Jane, watching the pile of groceries being heaped on the sounder. There might have enough left over for a bag of acid drops, but that's all. Michelle said mournfully as Mary Poppins took the pound note out of her bag. "Thank you," she said as the grocer handed her the change. "Thank you," he remarked politely, leaning his arms on the counter. He smiled at the manner that he was meant to be pleasant and continued. "Keeps nice and fine, doesn't it?" He spoke proudly as though he, himself in complete charge to the weather, and had made it fun for her purpose. "We want rain," said Mary Poppins, snapping her mouth and her hand back at the same time. "That's right," said the grocer hurriedly, trying not to offend her. "Rain's always pleasant." "Never," reported Mary Poppins, tossing Annabelle into a more comfortable position on her arm. The grocer's face fell. Nothing he had was right. "I hope," he remarked, opening the door courteously for Mary Poppins, "that we shall be favored with your further custom, madam." "Good day," Mary Poppins swept out. The grocer sighed. "Here," he said, scrubbing hurriedly in a box near the door. "Take this. I mean no harm, truly I knight, and only wanted to oblige." Jane and Michelle held out her hands. The grocer slipped 3 chocolate drops on Michelle and 2 into Jane's. "One for each of you, and for the 2 little ones, and one for," he nodded towards Mary Poppins' retreating figure. "Her." They thanked the grocer and hurried after Mary Poppins, munching their chocolate drops. "What's that you're eating?" he demanded, looking at the dark rim round Michelle's mouth. "Chocolates. The grocer gave us one each, and one for you." He held out of the last drop. It was very sticky. "Like an impudence," said Mary Poppins. She took the chocolate drop and ate it in 2 bites as though she would thoroughly enjoy it. "Is there much change left?" inquired Michelle anxiously. "That's maybe." She swept in the chemist and came out with a cake of soap, mustard platter, and tube of toothpaste. Jane and Michelle, waiting with the twins at the door, sighed heavily. The pound note, they knew, was disappearing at last. "She hardly had enough left over for her stuff, and even if she has, that won't be very interesting," said Jane. "Now to Mr. Tips," snapped Mary Poppins, swinging to chemist's package on her back from the hand and holding Annabelle tightly with the other. "But what can be bought there?" said Michelle in despair, for there was not much jingle in Mary Poppins' purpose. "Coal, 2 tons and a half," she said, hurrying ahead. "How much is coal?" £2 a ton." "But Mary Poppins, we can't buy that." Michelle stared at her, appalled. "I will go on the bill." This was such relief to Jane and Michelle that they bounced beside her, dragging John and Barbara behind them a trot. "Well, is that all?" Jane asked. Then Mr. Tip and his coals had been left safely behind. "Cake shop," said Mary Poppins, examining her list and darting in a dark door. Through a window they could see the pointing of pile macaroons, and assistant handed her large bag. "She bought a dozen at least," said Jane sadly. Usually the sight of anybody buying a macaroon filled them with delight, but today they wished and wished there wasn't macaroon in the world. "Now where?" demanded Michelle, hopping from one leg to another in anxiety to know if there was any pound note left. He felt sure there couldn't be any yet, he hoped. "Home," said Mary Poppins. Their faces fell. There was no change after all. Not even a penny of Mary Poppins would surely have spent it. But Mary Poppins, as she dumped the bag of macaroons up Annabelle's chest and strode ahead, and such a look on her face, and that did not dare to make any remark. They only knew that for worse than disappointed them, they felt they could not forgive her. "But this isn't the way home," complained Michelle, dragging his feet so that his toes scrubbed along the pavement. "Isn't the park on the way home?" "I'd like to know," she demanded, turning fiercely upon him. "Yes, but there's more ways than one going through a park," she remarked, and led them around to a side of it they had never seen before. The sun shone warmly down. The tall trees bowed over the railings and rustled their leaves. Up in the branches, and 2 sparrows were fighting over a piece of straw. A squirrel hopped along the stone balustrade instead of his hindquarters, asking for nuts. But today these things did not matter. Jane and Michelle were not interested. All they could think of was the fact that Mary Poppins had spent the whole pound note, uniform things, and had kept nothing over. Tired and disappointed, they trailed after her towards the gates. Over the entrance, a new one they had never seen before, spread a tall stone arch, splendidly curved with a lion and unicorn. Beneath the arch sat an old woman. The faces grew as the stone itself and is withered and wrinkled as a walnut. On her little old knees as she held a tray filled up with what looked like small colored strip of rubber, and above her head and firmly to the park railings a cluster of bright balloons bobbed and bounced and bounded. "Balloons, balloons!" shouted Jane, and losing her hand from John's sticky fingers, she ran towards the old woman. Michelle bounded after her, leaving Barbara alone and lost in the middle of the pavement. "Well, my dearie dog," said balloon woman in the old cracked voice, "which will you have? Take your choice, and take your time." She leaned forward and shook her tray in front of them. "We only came to look," Jane explained. We've got no money." "That's the good of looking at a balloon. We've got to feel a balloon. You've got to hold a balloon. You've got to know a balloon. Coming to Lou, what good will that to you?" The old woman's voice crackled like a little flame. She rocked herself on her stool. Jane and Michelle stared at her helplessly. They knew she was speaking the truth, but what could they do? "이것만 하고, then I was a girl." The old woman went on. "People really understood balloons. They didn't just come and look. They look. Yes, they look. There wasn't a child that went through these gates without one. They wouldn't have installed a balloon woman in those days just by looking and passing by." She bent her head back and gazed up at the bouncing balloons above her. "Oh, my loves and dogs," she cried. "They don't understand you anymore. Nobody but old woman understands. The old-fashioned now. Nobody wants you." "We do want some," said Michelle stoutly. "But we haven't any money. We spent the whole pound note and who is she?" inquired the voice close behind him. He turned and his face went pink. She began nervously. "Speak politely of your betters." "Speak politely of your betters," remarked Mary Poppins, stretching her arm over the shoulder. She put held the crown of a balloon woman's tray. Michelle stared, shining there among the limp on the blown balloons. "Then there was some changeover," said Jane, wishing her she had not thought so crossly to Mary Poppins. The balloon woman, her old eyes sparkling, picked up the coin and gazed at it for a moment. "Shiny, shiny, king and cloud," she cried. "I haven't seen one of these since I was a girl." She soaked her head at Mary Poppins. "Do you want a balloon, my lass?" "If you please," said Mary Poppins with hearty politeness. "How many, my dearie duck, how many?" "4." Jean and Michelle, almost jumping out of their skins, turned and flung their arms around her. "Oh, Mary Poppins, do you mean it? One, really, really?" "I hope always say that I mean," she said primly, looking very conceited. They sprang towards the tray, began to turn over the colored balloon cases. The balloon woman slipped a silver coin into the pocket on her skirt. "There, my shiny," she said, giving a pocket a loving pat. Then, with excited, trembling hands, she helped the children turn over the cases. "Go carefully, my dearie ducks," she warned them. "Remember, there's balloons and balloons, and one for everybody. Take your choice and take your time. There's many a child got the wrong balloon in his life was never the same after." "I love this one," said Michelle, choosing a yellow one with red markings. "Well, let me blow it up, and you can see if the right one," said the balloon woman. She shook it from him, and with a gigantic puff blew it up. Zip! It was it. You would hardly think such a tiny person could have so much breath in their body. The yellow balloon, neatly marked in red, bobbed at the end of his string. But I say," said Michelle's string, "I've got my name on it." And sure enough, the red markings of the balloon was later spelling of the two words, Michelle Banks. "Aha!" crackled the balloon woman. "What did I tell you? You took your time and choice was right." "See if mine is," said Jane, bending the balloon woman a limp blue balloon. She puffed and blew it up, and there was appeared across the blue gold was Jane Caroline Banks in large white letters. "Is that your name, my dearie duck?" said the balloon woman. She nodded. The balloon woman laughed to herself, a thin, old, cracking laugh as Jane took the balloon from her and bounced it on the air. Me, said John and Barbara, playing fat hands among the balloon cases. John drew out a pink one hat. As she blew it up, a balloon woman smiled. There's round the balloon. The word could clearly be seen. John and Barbara Banks, one between them because they are twins. But, said Jane, I don't understand. How did you know? You never saw us before. Oh, my dearie duck, I didn't tell you that you were balloons, and these were extra special. But did you put the names on them? Said Michelle. I, said the old woman, chuckled. Nary I. Then who did? Ask me another, my dearie duck. All I know is that the names are there, and there's balloon for everybody in the world, and only they choose properly. One for Mary Poppins too? The balloon woman cocked her head and looked at Mary Poppins with a curious smile. Let her try. She rocked herself on her little stool. Take your choice and take your time. Choose and see. Mary Poppins sniffed importantly. Her hand, however, hovered for a moment over a empty balloon and then pounced on a red one. She held it out arm's length, and their astonishment, the children saw it softly filling the air of one accord. Larger and larger grew till it became the size of Michelle's, but still it swelled until it was as large as any other balloon, and a cross appeared in letters in gold in 2 words, Mary Poppins. The red balloons bounced through the air, and the old woman tied a string to it, and with a little cracking laugh, handed it back to Mary Poppins. Up into the dancing air danced 4 balloons. They tugged their strings as though they wanted to be free their mornings. The wind caught them, flung them backwards and forwards, to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west. Balloons and balloons, my dearie ducks, for everybody, if only they knew it, cried the balloon woman happily. At that moment, an elderly gentleman in top hat, turning in the park gates, looked across and saw the balloons. The children saw him give a little start, and he hurried up to the balloon woman. How much? He said, jingling his money in his pocket. 7 pence halfpenny. Take your choice and take your time. He took a brown one, and the balloon woman blew it up. The words "An Honorable William Witherill Wilkins appeared out in green letters. Good gracious, said the elderly gentleman. Good gracious, that's my name. You choose well, my dearie duck. Balloons and balloons, said the old woman. The elderly gentleman stared at his balloon and tugged his string. Extraordinary, he said. He blew his nose with a trumping sound. 40 years ago, when I was a boy, I tried to brought a balloon here, but they wouldn't let me. Said they couldn't afford it. 40 years. It's been waiting for me all this time. Most extraordinary. He hurried away, bumping into the earth because his eyes were fixed on the balloon. The children saw him giving exciting leaps in the air as he went. Look at him, cried Michelle as the elderly gentleman bobbed higher and higher. But at that moment his own balloon began pulling at the string and felt himself lifted off his feet. Hello, how funny, mine's doing it too. Balloons and balloons, my dearie ducks, said the balloon woman and broke into her cackling laugh as the twins, while holding the balloons by single string, bounced off the ground. I'm going, shrieked Jane, and she too was blown upwards. Home, please, said Mary Poppins. Immediately, red balloons stood up, dragging Mary Poppins after it. Up and down she bounced, and enveloped the purses in her arms. Through the gates and above the path, red balloon wore Mary Poppins, her head very straight, her hair very tidy, and her feet were extremely walking as airs they usually walk in the earth. Jan and Michelle and the twins, tugged jerkily up and down by their balloons, followed her. Oh, cried Jane as she was railed past the branch of elm tree. What a delicious feeling. I feel as if I was made of air, said Michelle, knocking into a park seat and bouncing off it again. What a lovely way to go home. Oh, squeaked twins, tossing and blobbing together. Fast foot forward, please. I don't dawdle, said Mary Poppins, looking fiercely over her shoulder, for all the world as if they was walking steadily on the ground instead of being tugged through the air. Past the park keeper's house they went and down the lane walk. An elderly gentleman was there bouncing along ahead of them. Michelle turned for a moment and looked behind him. "Look, Jane, look, everybody's got one." She turned, and the distant group of people, all carrying balloons and carrying jerked and down in the air. "The ice cream man has bought one," he cried, staring and just missing a statue. "Yes, and the sweep, and there, do you see, is Miss Lark." Across the lawn, familiar figure and bouncing, a hatlet and gloved, holding balloon bearing the name, Lucinda Emily Lark. She bobbed across the aimwalk, looking very pleased and dignified, and disappeared round the edge of the mountain. At this time, park was filling with people, and every one of them a balloon with a name on it, and everyone was bouncing in the air. "Hello, here, room the Admiral. That's my port. Hello," said a huge nautical voice, and the Admiral and Mrs. Bloom went rolling through the air. They held a string of large white balloon with their names on it with letters. "Mast and mizens, cockles and shrimps, all the way, my hearts," roared Admiral Room, carefully avoiding a large oak tree. The crowd, balloons, and people grew thicker. There was hardly a patch of air, and the park was not rainbowy and balloons. Jane and Michelle could see Mary Poppins threading her way primly among them, and they too hurried through the throng, and John and Barbara bobbing at their heels. Oh dear, my balloon won't bounce me. If I just kept choosing the wrong one," said a voice at Jane's elbow. The old-fashioned lady with a quill in her hat and a feather look around her neck was standing on the path just below Jane. At her feet lay a purple balloon across with the written words in gold, "The Prime Minister." "What shall I do?" she cried. "The old woman at the gates, and take your choice and take your time, my dearie dog. I said, but I got the wrong one. I'm not Prime Minister." "Excuse me, but I am," said a voice at the side, and a tall man, elegantly dressed and carrying rolled umbrella, stepped up to her. The lady turned. "Oh, then this is your balloon. Let me see if you got mine." The Prime Minister, the balloon was not bouncing him at all, showed it to her. The name was Lady Muriel Brightson Jones. "Yes, you have. We got mixed," she cried, and handed the Prime Minister this balloon. She sized her own. Presently they were off the ground and flying among the trees, talking as they went. "Are you married?" Jane and Michelle heard Lady Muriel ask. And the Prime Minister answered, "No, I can't find the right sort of middle-aged grey, not too young and not too old, and rather jolly because I'm so serious myself." "What I do?" said Lady Muriel Brayton Jones. "I enjoy myself a cuddle light." "Yes, I think you'd very nicely," said the Prime Minister, and hand in hand they joined in tossing the throng. By this time the park was a little rather crowded. Jane and Michelle bobbing across the lawns, and Mary Poppins constantly bumping to other bouncing figures who had bought balloons from the balloon women. A tall man wearing a long moustache, a blue shirt, and helmet was being tucked together in the air by a balloon marked Police Inspector, and another bearing the words Lord Mayor dragged along a round fat person in a three-cornered hat, red overall, and large brass necklace. "Move on, please. Don't crowd the park. Observe the relotations, all later to be deposited in the rubbish baskets." The park people, roaring and ranting, holding a small cherry-colored balloon marked F. Smith, threaded his way through the crowd with a wave of his hand and moved on two dogs, a bulldog with the word "See You" written on the balloon, and fox terrier whose name appeared to be Albertine. "Leave my dogs alone, or I shall take your number and report you," cried a lady whose balloon was the Duchess of Merrifield. But the park keeper took no notice and went bubbling by, crying, "All those on the lead, don't crowd the park, don't smoking, observe the relotation," till the voice was hoarse. Where's Mary Poppins?" asked Michelle, whisking up to Jane. "They are just ahead of us." She replied and pointed to the prim, tidy figure and bounced at the end of the largest balloon in the park. She followed her words. "Balloons and balloons, my dearie ducks!" cried a cackling voice behind them. And, turning, she saw a balloon woman. Her tree was empty, and there was no balloon anywhere near her, but in spite of that was flying through the air 300 visible balloons and drawing her onwards. "Everyone saw," she screamed as she sped by. "There's a balloon for everyone, if only I knew it. They took their choice and they took their time. And I've thought a lot. Balloons and balloons." Her pockets jingled richly as she flew by, and standing still in the air, Jane and Michelle watched the small, withered figure shooting fast, full bobbing balloons past the Prime Minister of the Lord Major, past Mary Poppins and Annabelle, such as tiny grape grew tinier still, and the balloon woman disappeared into the distance. "Balloons and balloons, my dearie ducks!" The faint echo came drifting back to them. "Step along, please," said Mary Poppins. She flocked around her, and four of them. Annabelle, rocked by the movement of Mary Poppins' balloon, nestled closer to her and went to sleep. The gate of number 17 stood open. The front door was ajar. Mary Poppins, living neatly and bouncing primly, passed through and up the stairs. The children followed, jumping and bobbing. When they reached the nursery door, the 4 pairs of feet clattered noisily to the ground. Mary Poppins floated down and landed without a sound. "Oh, what a lovely afternoon," said Jane, rushing and feeling her arm around Mary Poppins. "Well, that's more than you are at this moment. Brush your hair, please. I don't care, you scarecrows," Mary Poppins said tartly. "I feel like a ball myself," said Michelle joyfully. "All airy fairy tree." "I'll be sorry for the fairy that looked like you," said Mary Poppins. "Go and wash your hands. We're no better than a sweep." And they came back, clean and tidy. Their 4 balloons were resting against the ceiling, and a strange family moved behind the picture of the mantelpiece. Michelle gazed up at them. "His yellow one, Jane's blue, the twins pink, and Mary Poppins red." They were very still. No breath of wind moved them, light and bright, steady and still, and leaned against the ceiling. "I wonder," said Michelle softly, heard to himself. "You wonder what?" said Mary Poppins, sorting out her pencils. "I wonder if it could all have happened if you hadn't been with us." Mary Poppins sniffed. "I shouldn't wonder if you didn't wonder too much," she replied, and with that Jane, Michelle had to be content.